Hello, people of the internet. Welcome to the special report, your news and views program about geek gaming culture on the internet. If you like what you see in here, please go hit that subscribe button and also ring the bell to get notified of latest videos, because you know how YouTube's going to be. Coming up in the show today, a bit of a rather heavy story today. A Sony exec gets canned after a YouTube channel exposes him for having a bunch of, let's just say, very inappropriate conversations with somebody he thought was somebody else. We're going to talk not just about his conduct and what happened, but also the media's non-response to this, because guess what they didn't want to talk about? We're going to give you all the details on that, because that and the OCRemix Track of the day is coming your way right about now. A Sony exec is right now in very big trouble. He got terminated by Sony on the back of what had transpired this weekend. Now, before we go any further, I want to warn people that this is going to contain some pretty heavy subject matter, so please be advised of that. Also, please be advised also that not many in the mainstream video game outlets covered this at first, but once they knew that they couldn't ignore either that, or they knew they were in a glare by Sony, they decided to go ahead and cover it. Now, CNET did at first, and then Newsweek and IGN, who is probably the CNN of video game reporting, to this very moment, as of recording this video, has not acknowledged that people actually know who he is. Person that is in question here is Sony PlayStation Network VP George, and wish me luck with this last name, Cacioppo, Cacioppo. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. However, the YouTube channel People vs. Preds had actually caught him in the act of trying to elicit some lewd actions with what he thought was a 15-year-old minor. Yeah, and they caught this guy Chris Hansen style, where it is quite ironic that Chris Hansen's also gotten himself into trouble for something really similar. Now, they posted the video onto their YouTube account. I will post it in the comment section instead of in the description below the video, because descriptions also trick the YouTube algorithm and the YouTube demonetization thing that goes on, so you can't put it there either now. So you had to put it in the comment section, that way the YouTube algorithm doesn't catch that. But we will do that one way or another, because we don't serve to YouTube and we don't care about those algorithms. We find ways around that. YouTube, you're not going to stop us from sharing the actual truth behind what's going on here. So obviously this is really disgusting, and somebody who is a high-ranking person at Sony. And keep in mind, we're also going to criticize all the console manufacturers. We're going to give them credit when they have them owed to them. We're going to give them criticism when they're owed it. No matter who they are, whether it be Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, or the PC Master Race, it doesn't matter. In this case, it is Sony that is getting the hot water aimed at them. And to top all this off, they also showed chat logs. Now, I'm not going to show you the actual chat logs here. They said they would show them for a limited amount of time. I'm going to see if I can find a way to get them to a more permanent location, so we'll always have a record of what has happened to be on the public spectrum. I've already archived the link that they have to their Google Drive, and we'll see what we could do about that for you. However, this is not the end of the story, because Sony had terminated this guy immediately following the incident that occurred here after they found out about this. Remember, this guy was here for about 8 or so years that he was on Sony's payroll, but also now in a high-ranking position, and they just let him there. I'm not quite sure what was going on there. Now, to be quite fair, because some of these YouTube videos or channels that popped up on the wake of the Chris Hansen popularity have been quite shady in how they can trick somebody into doing one thing when in reality they're actually doing something else. I heard in some places it can be actually illegal to do stuff like this and do vigilante stings like this. I don't know the legality in every single state. I don't follow the law as much as I probably should in this sort of regard. I do know that in certain states, the age to consent is a bit lower than 18, and in some countries it's very low. In Japan, it is, the time of this recording, I believe, is still 14 years of age, which is kind of crazy. However, it is the law there, so we have to go by what that law states. And that's why you have to be quite careful of these kinds of things, because even though the mindset is, okay, 18 years of age is the age of consent, that's not a federal law, and each state has their own jurisdiction as to what is considered age consent in that state. I'm not completely sure where George was resigning at this point in time as of when this occurred. However, from what I can probably gather from how the video was recorded and what kind of house he was in, that he was living in a pretty swank neighborhood, in the sense where maybe it was 18 years of age. So let's be fair here and address that point. Again, you may think, okay, that's really crazy that each state has their own fluctuating age of consent laws. However, it is something that does exist in this country, and there is no federal law addressing that point. Maybe there should be, so there's no confusion, but until we get into that conversation, until we actually address that, we can't actually address things like this, like what happened with the speaking out with the wrestling stuff with Justin Roberts and stuff like that. Unless we actually address that one point, we can't address anything else on that regard. But on this particular case, I think you can have it a clear-cut and dry case where this guy should have never even made contact with anybody who was not in his age. And good lord, looking at him, he's probably in his late 30s, early 40s. Also, even though I can understand why the guy in the video then decided he was going to shout and scream and call for anybody to listen to him, saying that the guy was eliciting lewd conduct from a minor. However, at the same time, I'm not sure if that's the right way to go about it. I think maybe he should just call the authorities and let them handle this. I don't know if they would do anything that would have actually helped, given how people's perception of cops are right now. They're pretty polarized. So I don't know how that would have went down, but I don't know how I feel about the guy who was recording this video going and shouting from the rooftops that this had occurred. That the guy just decided, hey, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Close the door. Maybe George was trying to exercise his right to be silent. Remember, you have the right to remain silent because anything you say can be used against you in a court of law if it gets that far. But again, you have to go through the proper channels. That's just how it is. Maybe it's something that we don't want to go down, or maybe it's something we don't feel comfortable going down. However, perhaps that could have been a better avenue that he could have gone down instead of just shouting all over the place. And plus, it was snowing there as of the recording of that video. Now, that is part one of this whole story. But I want to get to something that a lot of people are addressing here on this whole thing. When Vic Benanga, when Troy Lovett, when Scott Cawthorn did what they were alleged to have done. Vic Benanga, he lost his civil case. However, there's really no way to try him on a criminal ground because there's really no concrete evidence. I know that's something that upsets a lot of people. However, it is something that you need in order to be able to do something about that on a criminal scale. And plus, civil cases can be lost because some of the lawyers are not really known to be quite good. However, when you take a look at Troy Lovett and Scott Cawthorn, what were they accused of? They were accused of expounding opinions which people didn't agree with, where maybe more Republican-oriented viewpoints, or with Troy Lovett, he was criticizing the video game media. They don't like that, and they will find whatever they can and will smear that person without making it apparent that's why they're smearing him. They were trying to say, oh, well, he was supporting this or that. No, he was criticizing the video game media. That's the only reason they went after him to begin with. And of course, Activision Blizzard, we all know what's going on there. And yes, we have been covering that despite certain people sitting on that story until they couldn't ignore that anymore. And you know who I'm talking about there. You know who I'm discussing. And people were trying to use that as a way in order to to condemn people for calling out someone else who is just as harassing and abusive. However, I'm not going to get too much into that. Let's talk about what their opinion was here on this particular person. I want to direct your attention to something that ResetEra Takes 2.1 had brought up when they were discussing this particular case. There were a few different threads that people had tried to make about this guy, George Kakiopo. I think that's the way you pronounce his name. And 2 times it led to people saying, please don't link to random YouTubers / Twitter users. Use legit news sources or actual victim accusations. And of course, B-Dubs is one of the people who decides he's going to chime in on this, saying for incredibly serious accusations like this, random Twitter, YouTube users are not a legitimate source. If a victim comes forward or there is a legitimate news article, we can have a thread. Until then, please try to use legitimate sources or actual victims' accusations when it comes to making threads on serious accusations such as these. This happened 2 times. And then decides they're going to permanently ban people for bringing this up. Couple of times until it was impossible for them to actually ignore this. Now, keep in mind that ResetEra has some fluctuating rules when it comes to this sort of thing, where the minute somebody they don't like has anything wrong being accused of them, they don't waste any time in delving into the murky waters. They don't have any problem doing that. But when it comes to somebody that they might like, which is Sony, because they like when Sony censors those graphic novels, guess what happens? Now they are careful. Now they want to be reserved. Now they want to do the one thing we've been telling them to do from the very beginning. Wait until you get some actual sources that you can trust. However, in this case, there was something you can trust. The person who posted the video was the person who had busted him. You don't get that more of a piece of evidence than that. And they posted the receipts. You don't get any better than that. For the person who actively found this out. And they said, oh, don't look at any random Twitter or YouTube accounts. Get some actual victim accounts. This person was busting him. What other proof do you need, ResetEra? What other proof do you need in order to say that this guy was an absolute monster? What other proof do you need? Please explain to me how that was not enough information for you. Oh, of course, you're going to deplatform Troy Levitt or Scott Cawthorn the very second that they have an opinion you don't like, or you're going to deplatform Angry Joe for something that was later recanted, and you're going to use that as an excuse to deplatform him because he didn't give The Last of Us 2 a score that was satisfactory to you. What about that chat room that you wanted people to just be quiet about, or you were trying to get people to stop talking about, or to even acknowledge that the thing existed? Which, by the way, from what we can gather, that thing still exists. It hasn't gone away at all. It still exists to this day. And you have not done anything, Era. But yet now we're supposed to be the least bit careful about this when the evidence is showing right in front of your face. And all you gotta do is look, and you are telling people to wait for actual victim counts or official confirmation or evidence when the evidence is right there. You're stopping people from linking the very thing that incriminates him. What even is this? And you're not the only people who were saying that this was not worth covering. Dan Stapleton, who is the IGN executive editor of reviews, had answered to another person asking why did you not cover this, and he went on to say, quote, I never heard of him. I bet that's why you aren't seeing anyone cover it. It's a guy no one knows being implicated in crimes unrelated to his job. If Sony turned out to have known and protected him, or if he used his position to do it, that would be game industry news. And you want to know the weird thing about this? No, not just weird, absolutely horrendous thing about this whole thing. Dan Stapleton didn't even have the balls to keep that tweet up. It is now deleted. We do have it on archive though, because you know what? We want to hold you people accountable for what you say. You're not going to get away with it with just deleting the tweet. We have it on archive. It is there forever. You're not getting away from it, Dan. And you're not getting away from having to answer to this either, because quite frankly, the evidence is right there. This guy was there for almost 8 years. How many more people was he trying to do this to? You might get a victim account now because now he's been found out. Now he's been exposed, clear as day, in a state that obviously has age of consent laws, that the age is above 15 years of age. So he's clearly guilty. And the evidence is right there, plain as day. Maybe the guy knew what this YouTube channel was all about once he found out that he was caught. And maybe the guy who was creating the YouTube video might have been better off than just calling the authorities and going through the proper channels instead of shouting through the rooftops like he was. But he is a high standing position. How much do you want to bet that they were not only ignoring it, but telling you to ignore it? Because if you did do anything before they got their hands on it and before they could no longer ignore it, that they were going to keep you out of certain press events. And you could not bring yourself to even keep that tweet up. You could not find the guts to keep that up, because you knew you were in the wrong. You could not bring yourself to just say you were in the wrong there. Why is it that you can't just say, hey, our egos were bruised a little bit? I can do that. I can say it was wrong 1-2 times. Why can't you? Because Sony has you by the nose? We don't serve any video game company. We don't serve them. We're trying to serve the people who watch us, to depend on us to give them that information in order to hold those people accountable. That's not holding people accountable, Dan. That's not holding people accountable, ResetEra. That's not holding people accountable, mainstream gaming media. You have to cover this. You have to. Because you know what? We were all over the Activision Blizzard scandal. We still are. We haven't stopped talking about that. We haven't stopped worrying about that. We haven't stopped saying anything about that. We haven't done anything to stop that. The mainstream media has. The mainstream media, who goes by the if it bleeds, it leads mantra, decided that the Activision Blizzard thing didn't bleed anymore. The well was run dry, so they decided to go to the next thing to get more page clicks. But we actually care about getting the news out, because we're not just about the money. We're about making sure that we can have big change in these game companies and in the game media industry. And it's not going to happen if you pick and choose who you're going to cover and then slam anybody who dares to cover it that is not within your little circle. Maybe YouTubers get it right. Maybe the YouTubers get it right, and maybe we deserve a little bit more credit than you people in the gaming media industry are giving us right now. And instead of doing your jobs, instead of calling these people out, you're going to say, oh, well, this person we're going to protect. Yeah, BS. We know why. Because Sony had you by the you-know-whats. They had you there. And if it was Microsoft and Nintendo, of course, we were going to say the exact same thing. Why? Because we don't hold ourselves behest of these game companies. This is obviously disgusting all around. And I hope this guy not just gets fired, which he obviously has, but then gets what's coming to him in the form of criminal charges. I want to see that happen. But I also want to see people like Dan, like Jason Schreier, like ResetEra get put on blast constantly for not covering stuff like this, for sitting on things like Activision Blizzard, for taking more time to worry and whine about people not agreeing with him politically. And instead of doing that, actually bust some of these guys. These are the real Neanderthals in the gaming industry. It's people like this George person. It's people like Dan and Jason and maybe even Jim Sterling, to not only sit on these stories, but also to use these stories in order to cover for other people. Stop worrying about what Troy Levitt said about you guys. Stop worrying about who Scott Cawthorn donated to. Why should we care who he donated to? Why does it matter to you guys? Why was that brought up in a vacuum in the first damn place? Stop worrying about that. Stop sitting on Activision Blizzard all of a sudden. If we were less concerned about that and more concerned about people like George, then maybe people like Zoe Quinn would get busted for once. Maybe people would finally put her in her place. but I'm not going to hold my breath for that. I'm glad that this person got busted, though. I'm glad that this person got what he had coming to him, but we need to do a hell of a lot more if we're going to get any further in that. We got to be a bit better than what Dan and Jason Schreier are like, and what ResetEra is obviously like, because they were obviously trying to cover for this guy. That makes them just as guilty as the person who committed the crime was, because that would make them accessories to the crime. That'll do it for this edition of the Special Report. Thanks as always for watching. If you liked what you see, please go hit that red subscribe button, and also ring the bell twice, because YouTube is trying to bury all sorts of different kinds of videos, so obviously they're not going to like this one, and I really don't care because I don't hold myself to YouTube either. And also, please go follow me on the socials, Twitter, Facebook, you know where to go. And I will try to get more of the Metroid Dread playthrough up as soon as I possibly can. However, be as it may, I'm going to end this with the OCRemix track of the day to pay homage to somebody who had done not only this, but to also hold people accountable, which is Total Biscuit. We miss both his insights and him doing stuff like holding these people accountable, which sadly, these people have decided that because his passing, they don't have to behave like they were before his passing. No, we're still going to hold them accountable. However, I am going to go all day on that if I go any further. Let's go to a game that got me interested in the Mega Man series, Mega Man 3, and a remix by FARK, which would get you demonetized itself if you said that any other way, if you pronounced that wrong. This is a remix of the Hard Man stage from Mega Man 3 called Harding. There's no euphemisms in that whatsoever. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you as always for watching. I'm Ginny Shadow, and that just happened.